This week we remember the most significant event in all human history. It's the death and resurrection of Jesus. Now, we do celebrate them on two separate days, Friday and Sunday, yet they are actually the same event. A quick run through history. The time of creation in Genesis 1, we're told that God created the heaven and the earth was formless, empty, and there was darkness. The first thing God did was to say, "Let there be light," and there was light. Now, this is even before he'd made the sun and the moon and the stars. The light came from God himself, because light is God's creation. This is clearly shown in Revelation chapter 21 when it's talking about the time when God's reign comes complete and the New Jerusalem comes, and it's described as this: "The city does not need the sun or the moon to shine on it, for the glory of God gives it light, and the Lamb is its lamp." God is light, and his presence on earth enables the sun to give light. When we read the account of Jesus' crucifixion in Luke, he tells us that what should have been, it was noon, what should have been the sun at its highest and the brightest, the earth was plunged into darkness, and plunged into darkness for 3 hours. It wasn't an eclipse, it wasn't a meteorological event. The world was plunged into darkness because God withdrew his light. And this signifies the tremendous significance of what was happening. To understand that significance, we need to go back again to creation and Adam and Eve. God created them, and they were living in perfect harmony in what must have been absolute paradise. They were given complete freedom of the place. There was only one instruction. They were not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, this is just symbolic, because what it's saying is that Adam and Eve were not to decide for themselves what was good and what was not. But they did decide. And when they decided, they were actually rebelling against God. And the outcome of this disobedience was suddenly they saw they were naked and they were ashamed. And they went to hide from God. They didn't want to be in his presence. The relationship was broken. Because of this disobedience, they were banished from the garden, and death became a reality. It says, "For dust you are, and to dust you shall return." The punishment for disobedience is death. This is why God gave the people a system of animal sacrifice, because in his mercy, he was giving them a substitute. Now, if someone came offering a sacrifice for their sin, what they would do is they would lay their hand on the animal as it was being slaughtered, and this was a reminder to them that this animal was dying in their place. The idea was to convince people of the seriousness of sin, the seriousness of disobedience. In the tabernacle, which was the tent built in the desert, and then in the permanent temple, when a person entered, the first thing they would see would be the altar of sacrifice, because this reminded them that you cannot enter the presence of a holy God without dealing with sin. Now we come to the book of Hebrews, and Hebrews 10 tells us, "The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. For this reason, it can never, by the same sacrifice repeated endlessly year after year, make perfect those who draw near to worship. Otherwise, they would have stopped being offered, for the worshippers would have been cleansed once and for all and would no longer have felt guilty for their sins. But those annual sacrifices were a reminder of sins. It's impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sin." The system of sacrifice, it was only temporary. Jesus is the one who dealt permanently with the issue of our disobedience, which separates us from God. He lived a life of complete obedience, and yet he was willing to give up that life as a sacrifice. He took on himself all the sin of the world, and he gave his life to pay for it. And because his life was without sin, he was the only sacrifice that was worthy to be made. Only sacrifice good enough. The blood of animals could never be anything but a reminder to the people that the cost of disobedience is death. As Jesus died, God withdrew his light from the world, and the people were plunged into darkness for 3 hours. The mocking of the crowd ceased. The people went away, and Luke tells us they went away beating their breasts. That's a sign of distress. What they had just witnessed was something just overwhelming. They couldn't cope with it. Jesus himself cried out, "My God, why have you forsaken me?" It was a cry of anguish, because he'd taken on himself all the sin of all humanity for all time, and so the Father had to turn his back on him. And Jesus experienced what hell really is, absence from the presence of God. Yet even in his despair, he still remained faithful to God, and his last words were, "Into your hand I commend my spirit." As he died, the enormous curtain in the temple that closed off the most holy place from the rest of the temple was ripped from top to bottom. Now this most holy place held the Ark of the Covenant, which was the very presence of God. And the high priest was the only one who could go in there, and only in once a year. And he would go in with the blood of a sacrifice, sprinkle it on the top of the ark, and this was to atone for the sins of the nation. That curtain was 30 feet high, 45 feet wide. It was made of many, many layers. It was so heavy that it took 300 priests to hang it. And yet it was ripped from top to bottom. It could only be an act of God. Its significance, of course, was that the way to God was now opened up by Jesus for his followers. No more need of a human high priest as an intermediary. Jesus gave his life willingly because he knew this sacrifice was the only one sufficient to pay the price of all our disobedience. He did it for you, he did it for me. None of us deserve to be in the presence of God, but he invites us to come through his Son Jesus. He is the only way to enter the presence of God.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that he should give his only Son to make a wretch his treasure. How great the pain of searing loss, the Father turns his face away, as wounds which mar the chosen one bring many sons to glory. Behold the man upon the cross, my sin upon his shoulders. Ashamed, I hear my mocking voice call out among the scoffers. It was my sin that held him there, until it was accomplished. His dying breath has brought me life. I know that it is finished. I will not boast of anything, no gifts, no power, no wisdom, but I will boast in Jesus Christ, his death and resurrection. have paid my